Hey, Steve Mignani here, and today's video isn't going to be junkyard crawl or muscle car crawl at High-Octane Classics in Auburn, Mass, or even model car crawl at my house in North Brookfield, but rather we're going to be going back in time about 20 years to when I was at Hot Rod Magazine, and we used to have a thing called Hot Rod Magazine TV that ran on Speed Channel way back when. I hosted maybe 30 or so episodes of that and did segments in them, and one of them was a thing where I made fiberglass parts, and I showed how to do it in a little episode we called Cooking with Steve, where I kind of played Julia Child. So here we go, enjoy the tape.
Live from the Hot Rod Shop, it's Cooking with Steve. So, ladies and gentlemen, give a warm welcome to the cook who's never been kissed, Chef Steve Mignani.
Hello and welcome to Cooking with Steve. You people are too kind, you really are. Well, on today's show, we've got something really special for you. We're going to show you how to cook fiberglass at home. Now, you may wonder why you'd want to do that. You can, it's easy, and I'm going to show you how. Come on. There are two good reasons why you'd want to cook fiberglass at home. First, if you have some heavy part you want to make a little lighter, and secondly, if you have some rare part that you need to make a replica of. Now, in this case, we've got a 62 Valiant. It's a really nice car. Mike Baran also has one that's a real So we're going to hook him up with a new headlamp bezel for his car, a replica made out of fiberglass. So let's go cooking with Steve. Here are the fresh ingredients we'll need for our tasty fiberglass concoction. Scissors and a knife, some gloves to keep your hands clean, plaster of Paris with a bowl and some cups to mix it with, mold release agent in the form of some cooking spray and petroleum jelly, wax paper, any kind of car wax containing carnauba wax, some spray mask, coarse and fine fiberglass cloth, gel coat with kicker, a paintbrush, and some polyester resin with kicker. As with a bundt cake, our plaster mold needs to be supported. We'll use a cardboard box in this case. The first move is to outline the bezel with a marker. And then using an X-Acto knife, we'll cut just inside of the perimeter so that we can place the bezel down into the box and it sits flush. But before we start mixing plaster of Paris, we have to lay some wax paper over the box and then cut that hole into the wax paper. The wax paper will prevent the plaster of Paris from sticking to the box and ruining our attempt to pull the mold away from the box after the plaster cures in 24 hours. With our mold support box ready to go, be sure to apply duct tape to any openings in the part to keep the plaster from flowing through and into the box. Before we can start spreading plaster over our metal master part, we've got to get it ready so the plaster doesn't want to stick. That's done with mold release agents. Vaseline is applied to the back side of the duct tape so it doesn't want to stick, and then cooking spray is applied to the entire part to ease removal from the mold once it's cured. The plaster is applied in 3 steps. The first is a very thin coating that you have to let sit for about 20 minutes. The next step is to put some horsehair into the plaster. This will give it some strength. After that, you're going to put a final coating of plaster on this and let the whole thing sit for 24 hours. After letting our tasty plaster mold simmer for 24 hours, we're ready to dig in. Voila! Now we can prepare the plaster mold for fiberglass. First, we'll baste it with some carnauba wax, let it dry, don't try and wipe it off, and then we'll give it a glaze of liquid mask. These two things are installed so that fiberglass doesn't want to stick to the plaster. When we're done, it will look like this. Although we are making a fiberglass replica of our original part, here's a little trick. Use gel coat in the plaster mold. It'll give you a nicer, smoother finish. Mix it up according to the instructions and then let it set for 3 hours to harden. Now it's time to work with the fiberglass, which is why we wear our gloves. We install the coarse fiberglass first. That gives the part strength. Pull it apart so it's nice and easy to work with. Place it around the gel coat on all areas, and then brush on the liquid resin with the hardener. Tamp it down real good to make sure that the chopped fiberglass is fully saturated. Wait a couple of minutes for it to sort of set a little bit. With the coarse fiberglass stuck down with the resin for strength, we'll now apply some woven fiberglass matting to give it a smoother finish on the back. Cut it out a little bit bigger than the area to be covered, set it down, and then brush on the catalyzed resin. The fumes from the chemicals we're going to have here are pretty stout, so you definitely want to work in a well-ventilated area. It's important to work quickly because if the resin should set up before you're done, it'll make things a lot tougher. You've usually got about 10 or 15 minutes before the resin kicks and becomes semi-solid. Of course, within an hour, it'll be rock hard, but not quite ready to handle. That takes 24 hours. Now that we're done applying the fiberglass, we'll let this simmer for between 10 and 24 hours, which gives us a little time for some libation. Sparkling. Now is the moment of truth. Let's take the lid off the pot. Wow, a masterpiece. After you take the part out of the mold, use some tin snips to trim away the excess fiberglass. Well, here it is, our finished part. And it even fits. A little bit of silver paint, and it looks just like the original. Just goes to show that home cooking with fiberglass is totally possible, and your imagination is the only limit. Next week, stay tuned, because we're going to be creating a big plate of pinto flambe right here on Cooking with Steve. Canceled? What do you mean we're canceled?